Welcome to another episode of Quantum Action, the place where you come to get the energy and the things that you need to go to infinity and beyond. Today, we've got sci-fi writer Bob Blanton with us from Mexico. He's not from Mexico, but he's living in Mexico. And Bob's written a very successful sci-fi series, which is, smashing the charts on Amazon and elsewhere. And Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be
Bob,
here.
You've got an interesting journey. So tell us a bit about, your career and that, and then what got you into writing sci-fi books?
I graduated with a degree in engineering, computer engineering, and electrical engineering back in the day. And so I actually worked for Hewlett-Packard for 32 years. Mm-hmm. And ever since I was a kid, I've read always. My mother made sure all of us read. I started reading pretty early, about 5 years old, because I had an older brother and an older sister, and I wasn't going to let them do anything that I didn't do. So if they could read, I had to be able to read. So, and my mom was really good at encouraging. So I read a lot, loved science fiction, Asimov and Heinlein and various of the early writers were just my heroes back then. And, for some reason, I always thought, it'd be kind of cool if I could write a book. And I actually, for an engineering kind of person, I always did well in English, as long as you didn't require my spelling to be good.
Okay,
And sometimes my grammar's a little weak, but not too bad. But anyway, so I was, I played around a couple times. I wrote 2 or 3, first chapters that never went anywhere. But then I was at work, I started traveling to Asia, which is, as you would know, it's a really long flight. You're in the air for 10, 12 hours. And so in my head, I'm dreaming about something. I got to do that. And you can only read so much on a plane. And so I came up with a storyline for my first novel, which was the Stone series, Matthew and the Stone. And so I wrote that series actually fairly quickly during a weird period at work where things were kind of awkward, and I, had a lot of extra time for a while. And so I wrote that and tried to get a publisher interest, and that didn't work. So I just gave up and just set it aside and went on in life. And then just before I retired, my nephew had done some self-publishing on Amazon, and something came up and he was talking about it. So he told me what to do. And so I said, well, I'll try that. And if I can't get a publisher interest, I'll self-publish, screw it. And so that's what I did. I didn't do a lot of research, which is poor on my part, which is unusual for me. But so I published it. It didn't do that well, and my nephew told me I needed better covers. I improved the covers, paid for them, and it still didn't do that well. But I accomplished the main goal for me was I was able to actually make a novel go from beginning to end, and that is hard. A lot of people may not realize how hard it is to come up with a full plot that goes to work. So anyway,
I've written nonfiction. I've written 2 nonfiction books and then 1 fiction. That fiction one was short and it was quite quick to do. The one I'm working on now, which is a fiction, it's not as easy as nonfiction.
No, it's hard. You got to come up with a plot. And so somewhere along the line, I retired and moved to Mexico. Because I have that as a view. It's not great because it's all cloudy out there. But so I had a lot of time. So I said, I'll try to write another series. I've been thinking about this other more sci-fi series.
And this is this one here, right? The one I have here.
That's it.
Very good book. Those of you that are watching, get this book. It's really, really good.
And this time I actually did a lot of research about, looking about I did research on the other book quite a bit, which defined a lot of my style. I do a lot of dialogue versus just explaining.
And I like that. I like the dialogue because it's almost like you're watching a movie, and it gives pace to what you're reading. Some writers put a lot of prose, and I find it difficult to follow all these descriptions of plants and this and that and the other. Where yours is, there's a lot of dialogue, and I like that about it.
And so I was actually trying to find this thing, but I saw this blog, or whatever what do you call what you're doing? Podcast,
yes.
From a woman who talked about how to do a plot, the different things. And she used 3 bears, Goldilocks and 3 bears as the example, but her theme was really strong, and it's not always correct, but it's pretty accurate. You start, you get a beginning, you get to the middle, you have a twist, and then you go to the end, and then there's other things you can do. But that was her big deal. You go that twist, climax, and have everything related to that motion, and you have little activities going on, but that's it. And so I go, okay, that makes sense. So when I wrote the books, I started that way. A couple of books I wrote, I didn't quite follow that as accurately as I normally did. And I got feedback that they were a little flat in people's mind. They were fun to me, but they didn't have as much energy. And so people.
So the Delphi series, which is what this Starship Sakira is about, did you start it as a series? And did you think you were going to do 15, 16 books, or did that just come about as you went along?
Again, I did a lot of dream. I write in my head almost completely before I write on paper. I write, I have a lot of the story. So I actually had in my mind what the first 3 books were going to be, pretty close.
First 3, okay, yeah.
And I actually wrote them before I published the first 3. I wrote them all before I published the first one. And I actually, which was kind of good because I went back.
And also, I like the fact that it's not very thick.
Yeah.
And it's 240 pages, more or less.
Yeah, 70,000 words. It's kind of that's when I read.
How many words? How many words? 20,000, you said?
Huh?
How many
70,000
words? 70,000. Okay.
Yeah, I like 75,000 words. When I read, I like that because it's about. It's not so long. If you read a thesis or Gone with the Wind or War and Peace, it's just so long.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I had a concept of what I wanted to do, and I did all 3 books. And actually, what was interesting, which writers who write a series need to think about this, because this happened in my first series, and I never could correct, is you can block yourself into a corner that you don't realize is a corner until you get to the next book, and then you realize you blocked the plot. You created a no-win situation.
So a 3-book becomes a 2-book.
Yeah, all of a sudden you can't make it around the corner because you did something that was innocuous. Or you can, which is what I like to do, you can see the plot for the next book in the previous book if you know what the next book is going to be a little bit. So you can kind of go that. And as you know, from the first book, all my books end with essentially the first paragraph of the next book. Just to let those that are watching and listening, your book 1, which is Starship Sakira of the Delphi series, actually has 2,132 reviews on Amazon, 4-star ratings. That's amazing. And then the last one that's been published, which is book 15, which is only published in July of 2022, so just a few months ago, you've already got 1,288 reviews, and they're 4.5 stars. So, obviously someone that's reading book 15 has probably read all the other 14. And you're keeping people there. You're building fans. That's really, really good. How did you do it? How did you get all these people to read your books? Well, there are a couple of things I did that, again, I told you I wrote 3, and I didn't realize this when I did it, but I knew it in a way, but I didn't in the detail. I had read that basically nobody wants to read a series that is book 1 and no other books. So they said, don't expect a whole lot of motion on a series with book 1. So they recommended publishing very close. So I wound up publishing the first 3 books almost at the same week.
So you didn't write book 1 and publish it. You wrote 1, 2, and 3, and then you released them one book after the other in a week.
And I would have probably spread them out a little bit, maybe a week or a month apart, but bang. Because what happens, and this is what shows up with my subsequent books, is you get a few readers on the first book, but whatever, people are looking for something to read, and you get lucky and get some. I did use the Goodreads giveaway, and that did boost a lot because you get a lot of exposure.
So that was the electronic copy, and just to sort of digress a little bit, I should imagine you selling more electronic copies or physical copies.
I almost sell no physical copies anymore. I never did. I mean, it's almost all electronic. I do Kindle Unlimited also.
Yeah, I've got Kindle Unlimited. In fact, when I bought this and started reading it, and then I saw it was on Kindle Unlimited. All 15 of them were. I said, "Oh well, that's easier to do."
And actually, about probably 2/3 of my revenue is Kindle Unlimited.
Oh,
they're avid readers. They're going to read. All right, they do a great job.
And what about the audio version? Did you record the audio version yourself?
No, I had somebody do it. My voice isn't done.
Yeah. And how, I mean, how many people are listening to the audio version?
I have to, I have the numbers up here somewhere. Let's see, what was it?
Because I've been listening to some podcasts and whatever about, self-publishing and that. And they're saying that, audiobooks is a big thing these days, which is why podcasts are so popular, because people can listen
Yeah, I've done
when
about
they're on the run,
22,000
when they're doing the
sales.
housework. Yeah.
Yeah. The audio's done about 22,000 in sales books.
Wow. Yeah.
For the 15. That's
Okay.
good. That's pretty good. But
You mean 22,000 copies or $22,000?
22,000 copies.
Copies. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's very
Which
good.
it's not as much money as you would hope it would be, but it's still a lot of money.
Yeah.
But so when I publish the book, and what I do now is, what happens is you get readers for the first book, and when you publish the second one, they buy it like that. So
Yeah.
what you do, and the way to make it work, is you pre-release the book.
Yeah.
And they say pre-release it on Tuesday. I learned this from a publisher.
Yeah.
Because Tuesday is the worst day to buy a book for sales. It's a horrible sales day.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it is.
Okay.
And so when you gather all those pre-release purchases and then you release the book on Tuesday, they all show up on Tuesday. There's not a lot of competition on Tuesday for the best-selling book. And so your rating goes way up on the pre-release sales, because they all show up as though you sold them on that one day.
Yeah.
And ratings drive sales.
Yeah.
For what it's reality of life, what your ranking of your book drives the sales. So what you get is a good boost on rankings. So people go, oh, it's probably not a bad book, and they see it later. And so they start, more people read it. So you get that momentum. And then because I released them all very close, that momentum built up. And so now for me, when I release a book, I get huge sales because I have a fairly good loyal fan base that buys in the pre-release.
Yeah.
And so it comes out number one, number two in one of the categories for maybe a few days, but that drives everything up because people see that book as number one and they go back to the first book because they don't want to start at number 14 or number 12, and it brings everything up. But it's that release and doing that timing correctly that has, and my opinion, one of the biggest impacts on your ability to get sales. You want to make sure that you take advantage of the pre-releases. Yeah. And the last book, I didn't do this because I released it on my birthday like an idiot.
Okay.
Is I didn't release it on Tuesday, and it really hurt. The releasing on a Tuesday is critical because that is, again, it is the slowest sales day for books. And so if you release on Tuesday and all your pre-releases show up, then bang.
Let's go back to the crafting of writing these books. Did you do any courses, creative writing courses, or did you read any books about how to write a novel, or did you just go for it?
No, I read.
And are you a pantser or are you a planner? I mean, did you plan more, or did you sort of, or you just?
I'm a planner. I'll explain it, but yeah, I read a bunch of books about it. I watched that series, a thing about the Goldilocks and pants, and it talks about pantsers and plotters.
Did you watch Brandon Sanderson's series that he does on YouTube?
No, I don't think so.
His lectures, he's good. He's got some really good lectures he teaches at BYU University about creative writing. I followed them, very, very good.
Yeah, and so I'm a little bit of, I like to know where I'm going. I've got a beginning and I have a general idea of the end, and so sometimes I have a really good direct plot. I know exactly what I want to do, how I want to go, but I always have, at least I know where I'm starting and I know about where I want to go.
And what about with the characters? I mean, did you like develop a card for each character and say, this is John and this is what he does and this is Mary and what she does?
No, I didn't. And because I'm really lazy I didn't, but in my head, I have that
you had it in
character definition pretty well. And I've only got the main characters, it's a few, but I have had to go back and do that to keep them straight. I have a plot and the character and events in their life, because you go along in your book 12 and you go, oh, Jason, wait a minute, is he married? Does he have kids? You're gonna have to go back to all your books to figure it out. So I try to keep track of it. And it's smart to do that, to keep.
What about writing software? Did you use any particular software, or you just go with Word? Microsoft?
I tried some software, but the problem is when you give it to an editor, how do you do it? They have to have the same software. Yeah. And so I went back to just using Word. I use Word. I use a formatting software called Sigil that lets you format it, which is pretty easy to do. Yeah. That lets me do a few things I couldn't do with Word and Amazon. But Word's a really good editor. It's a little At 70,000 words, it's struggling a little bit because that's a lot for some of the, they don't write, they don't, the tools in it aren't designed to have that much data to deal with sometimes. So it's a little slow, but not too bad. And I use Grammarly for,
Grammarly,
the general editing to make sure that I haven't done anything completely stupid. And then I go through a beta reader. My brother does a beta read for me for accuracy of the.
So how many beta readers do you have? Do you have just one, or do you have a series?
I just have two main ones, and then I have another one who's great, but she's on the list, that Teresa, but she comes back with lots of editorial corrections too. She can't help herself. It's not what she's supposed to do, but she can't help herself. So she does that. And so I do all those corrections before I ever hand it to my copy reader, because it's hard. Copy editing is hard to do. And the best advice I give anybody is you cannot be your own copy editor.
Yeah, of course.
Because when you read what you know you meant to say, not what you actually wrote sometimes. And so you will miss mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I do that. But the other thing I started doing after I started doing the audio, I caught more errors. I'm going like, damn, I'm reviewing the audio and go like, who did? She made a mistake. No, it's me.
Yeah.
I actually do a voice to a text to voice, and I listen to the books on audio before I release it. In the just the transcription that you have on available on the internet, or Word even does it reasonably well. And you will be amazed what you will pick up. And and I think this is the right thing to do. I always do something else when I'm doing that. I don't sit there and listen.
Yeah.
I'm playing cards or I'm doing something. So it's more background, and you pick these discontinuities up that they just go like, it sounds weird.
Yeah.
But you will find, I actually just last month I got a mistake reported on my second book.
Oh.
The readers report them, and then Amazon will tell you have to fix them, which is good, I think. But I'm going like, how can that be? I mean, if this has gone through audio, it's gone through that, and I go looking. It's like it's one of those things where you just typo it. You've got the word repeated twice, or usually what it is you do is I do there's apostrophe s, and they'll have the is also because I cut and paste it or something. So you want to make sure you copy, edit, and you do flow. Beta readers are great. Because the two things you don't want to have happen is you don't want your reader to go like, what? I can't figure that sentence out because it has awkward. And you also don't want your reader to go along like, well, that couldn't have happened. Where you've made a mistake in your plot logic, or in people behaviors that just aren't natural. Where, when you're in it, writing it, you can be so in tune with where you want to go that you actually force it, and then you don't realize it, but somebody else looking goes like, no, this doesn't work. You need to fix this passage, because nobody would do that, or it would have taken longer, or who knows what. But it's critical. And then when you write science fiction, you have the third category, which is you better, if you're going to talk about science in science fiction, you better do the science right. If you're just writing fantasy science fiction, which is everything is magical and cool, that works. I love those books. They're great. But don't start explaining the science if you don't explain it right. And so like the other day I was reading this book, and the guy's explaining the science, I go, that's wrong. And probably because I'm an engineer in background, so I'm going like, it doesn't work that way. And most people wouldn't caught it, but he needed a beta reader to say that, because everybody who's an engineering background or a technologist is going to catch the error, and it bugs the heck out of you. And I think on that particular series, I'm going like, I'm not going to read, I quit reading the book. It's like,
I do the same. Being a pilot, there's a friend of mine, he made this movie about this airplane heist. And in the movie, there's one pilot on the flight deck. So I called him out and said, what, you got one pilot on the flight? There's always two pilots on the flight deck. Airliners don't fly with one pilot. They fly with two. I mean, what would it cost you to slip another actor in there? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's great.
And those things can be, they're very disrupting, and they can also, for like in this case for me, it was like, because the books, it was sciencey. He was explaining things a lot. And said, he's not going to explain it right. I don't want to read it because it just will.
Of course. Yeah.
But in some.
So Bob, on the craft, then, what books did you read to help you to be a better writer?
I got to go down to the library and find them. I don't know.
But you read a few. So you did a bit of research.
Today, there are several podcasts and websites. Fictionary, I'll give her a shout out. I like that one. I read it off and on,
Yeah.
not as often as she probably wants me to, but
Yeah.
but there are so many now that do a good job. You just want to get one that's really by somebody who writes and
Yeah, I listen to Writing
Yeah.
Excuses. Brandon Sanderson has a podcast called Writing Excuses, and it's him and other series of writers on there. And that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about on the marketing front? Because obviously you did this all on your own, and you've got all
Yeah.
these people review the book. How did it go so crazy in 2,132 reviews? How did you do that?
There, part of it I got really, really lucky. But as I said, the way I released it created this big,
So Tuesday. So you released on a Tuesday.
and I got all three. I mean, it got this big
did you
thing.
pay
I
any
got a lot of
website to
readers.
put it out there?
Huh?
Did you pay any
Go ahead.
website like BookBub or anything
No,
like that? No.
I didn't.
Okay.
I've tried BookBub. They never will take me.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay.
But the one thing, again, I said, I did the Goodreads giveaway, which
Okay.
you can do. It's cheap. It's a really good way to get Amazon and Goodreads to push your book for you.
Okay.
But the other thing that for me where I was lucky is when I started, Amazon was doing top writers, the top 100 writers in a category.
Yeah.
And I inched my way into that. And once you got into that, it really fed on itself. They quit doing it after 6 months.
Yeah.
Too much free advertising. But basically I advertise on Amazon because that's where I figure my readers are going to be.
Yeah.
I spend quite a bit
Yeah.
relative to that. But you just have to figure I don't spend this much anymore, but you have to figure that you got to spend about half your income for a while to get momentum, and then you can back off.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and it partly is I know it would help a little bit, but I don't do Facebook advertising, but there are lots of ways to advertise, and you want to advertise if you can do it way. If you have friends or you have communities that you interact with, great to advertise into that. But if you don't, then you're really kind of, who's this person sticking their ad in? They don't know you, or
because I noticed you haven't got much social media apart from your Facebook page.
Yeah.
You're not doing any of these TikToks or YouTube, or I tried to look to see if there was a YouTube video about you. I guess this is going to be the first one. And I thought, this guy's not doing any of this, but look how many people have reviewed the book and have bought it. I mean, how did he do it?
Well, I've been, unfortunately or fortunately, I've been doing a book every 3 months for 2.5 years.
Yeah. So you're hammering it.
It really, and they're short. I mean, I'm not writing, and that's the other thing I think people need to realize. This is my pet peeve about writing.
Yeah.
There's really lousy writing.
Yeah.
There is pulp fiction fun writing. That's what I consider I do. And then there's up here, there's literature, right?
Yeah.
And then there are these people that then below literature, there is almost literature. It's really good, it's quality, it's most of your big name writers. And sometimes they become literature with time. Yeah. But then there's these people that are trying to do that, and they're trying so hard that it's not fun anymore. They're describing everything that goes on, the detail. They're not letting the story flow because they're trying to be so literature oriented.
Yeah.
Every detail they use,
all the prose and everything. Yeah.
The prose, it's just crazy. And if they would just relax and say, look, okay, I'm just writing for fun, they would do so much better, because sometimes you have a great plot, but you just can't get through it. It's just so much stuff there. And so you have to decide what you're going for. Some people really ought to be writing up here on the right-hand side of the spectrum. They have that talent, they have that desire, they're willing to put the enormous energy in. Especially, I love historical fiction and historical mysteries, and you have to put a lot of work into those books to get the details right and things. And so they tend to be up at the right. They write, and also they're trying to convey that era in the language. So they tend to put a lot more energy into that. But because they're doing it with that goal in mind, they don't go overboard too much. Usually it's pretty well written and really nice. But you have to decide if that's what you're going to do, you're going to do. But if you're struggling to do that, you might want to say, wait a minute, let me just write and get something fun down, and then let me see if I like it. And if I don't like it, then I'll fix it, rather than just pound away at the really long process. And that's, we're talking about long. That's the other thing. My dialogue, I get in trouble sometimes with people complain about it. I had a reviewer go like, this isn't a book, it's a screenplay.
Bob, tell us a bit about how the idea for the Delphi series came to you, and tell us a little bit about the series so those that are listening, watching, will find out what this is
I'm
about.
a guy, and as a kid, you always reading science fiction, you keep dreaming about how am I going to be king of the world, or something great happened for me, or things like that. So all these different visions, and everybody writes about spaceships. So a spaceship would be cool, and I kind of like the concept of a lot of people they find a spaceship and then they're gone, right? And I was thinking, no, come on, this is home.
Yeah.
How do you make home better, make Earth? So I kind of played around with that. That's something that interests me from lots of different reasons. And so I said, okay, no, we're going to find the place, the spaceship, and it's going to be about harvesting the technology and improving life on Earth and making it better. And the acute line, our interesting thing is Katie is in you'll see in this book, but also in all the, it's kind of the main thought. And I actually threw her in just kind of like, oh, this is too simple. I need to make Mark's life more complicated. So I brought his daughter in, but she's so easy to write to because a 12-year-old doesn't have a lot of baggage. Adults have a lot of baggage, a lot of things, but a 12-year-old that's bright and everything, you think about it going like, hey, they're going to all be in, they're going to be all in on the science fiction, on reading the AI, getting to know, learning the technology, because they don't have any other distractions. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to worry about where the paycheck's coming from or anything like that. So it was a lot of fun, and she's fun to write about. And
so this father-daughter find a spaceship, and then they harvest the technology to sort of improve.
And it's basically, and then they just keep moving forward, trying to improve the situation on Earth. They built a offshore city, which is Delphi City, and then they built a space station. And the normal stuff. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but we all know that if the government heard about the spaceship today, they would be trying to get control of it. It's not.
Well, this is the other thing I wanted to.
It really what happened.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to lead into is, there's been lots of UFO sightings over the last few years. The US government have even said, yes, these are unidentified flying. We don't know what they are. They released the footage of this Navy, this thing going up. They call it it's like a cube and it's going up and down very fast, and they don't know what it is. I mean, how much do you think that's real? I mean, could it be that aliens are visiting Earth?
It's feasible. I mean, we all have to get through the speed of light problem because it takes forever otherwise. But as I do in my book, their wormholes are theoretically possible.
Wormholes,
other things are theoretically possible. So it could happen. My view on it usually is, if aliens showed up to Earth, they would go like, these guys are crazy, and they'd leave. Because if they're at that level of technology, they don't need us for anything, right? There's nothing that we're going to give them. So they're not going to come here and take over or anything like that. They wouldn't do. Or they might study us, like going to the zoo. You see all the crazy, these people are weird, and they do that in Star Trek a few times. Stuff where you just
but if I was an alien, I wouldn't land on the lawn of the White House or Buckingham Palace. I would land somewhere in the country and meet with a farm boy and talk to them, because they're more.
You would try to get to know the people without them knowing you were the alien. You would look.
Or to do it that way.
Or you would pick somebody up and say, "Hey, be my buddy." And there's a lot of books that do that. And with your light thing, again, as a science engineer background, light's a very, very amazing thing, and it can move and do stuff to you, and your brain just doesn't believe it, because it reflects, and then it can cant up and down. So you get these big spots that just show up and back, and it's something to do with the reflection of the water, all kinds of different things. So mostly I accept the government's general explanation that, it's just some weird light thing that goes on, because, this happens, the atmosphere does this, and then you get these weird blinking things that go on. Because if there were aliens, we wouldn't see them. If they could get here and visit us, there's no way they're going to accidentally, let their pants down.
No, unless they want you to see them. I mean, yeah, and
if they wanted you to see them, then you'd really see them, right? So it would be.
I mean, there is a story of a I don't know whether this is true or not. There's a story of this guy called Valiant Thor, who was this alien that came down and spent 5-6 years in America, also visited Congress and met with President Eisenhower. And he wanted to share their technology for the benefit of mankind. But apparently the military-industrial complex said, "Oh, we want to make money out of this." I said, "No, this is not the purpose of me."
I could almost believe that.
I would share my technology so that people can get healthier and live a better life. That's what. And then after a few years, he said, "You know what? These people aren't ready for it," and he left. This is kind of the story. Yeah. And anyway, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But it kind of makes sense that they would leave after that.
Yeah, the one thing I do, and I use in my book a little bit, is I do believe evolution is universal. And we're fairly highly evolved, and we have some big problems. But I suspect that any other species that gets this evolved is going to have a kind of the similar set of problems. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to succeed and be, the top of the food chain, all that. You have to be a little ruthless. And if you have, engineering, we all love the bell curve.
Yeah.
And the bell curve says, if you got ruthless, you're going to have extremely ruthless, and you're going to have the other end of the spectrum. And so that balance really happens, and it's good and it's bad. That high energy, high drive people drive things forward. Unfortunately, you have the over energy, overdrive people that crush us, that are sick, or they do bad things, or they're just they don't care about the people. They're sociopaths essentially. Yeah. And sociopaths can be good. They're not psychopaths. There's a difference. Yeah. But because they're firmly fixed on the goal. But at the same time, you like to have a little more humanity in what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. So now you're working on book 16 of this series. How many do you think you're going to do? Or you don't know yet?
I kind of, we'll see. I've been struggling, as I mentioned earlier before the interview. I've been struggling this last year trying to get the last 2 books out. But I've got momentum going on the last one. I'm working on number 16, so I think I'll get it finished this year. Mm-hmm. I don't have a reason for it to end. I may come up to a point where I want to, somebody suggested, you do a gap, 20 years later, here's where we are.
Yeah, no, but Bob, it needs to become a TV show.
Yeah, I do too. Where all those Netflix or Prime Video guys come and visit me, I wish.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I have a friend who's a screenwriter. She was saying we should put a proposal together. I'll have to talk to her about it, but I'm still, it's a very tough business, so we'll have to see. But
but again, there's also, over the last few years, there's been some really bad sci-fi release. I mean, I don't like what they've done with Star Trek. I mean, these new movies they made where they rewrote the timeline, I thought that wasn't nice. This new series, Discovery, it's not Star Trek. And then obviously that other guy came up with The Orville, which I thought was a really good series. They made 3 seasons of it. I hope they come up with season 4. That's more Star Trek, but you've got the writers of Star Trek Next Generation working for The Orville now. Yeah. And those guys know what they're doing. Brandon Braga and he's the
I think the Hollywood crowd and whatever the media is catering to 17-year-old teenage boys or something, because there's the aggression in the movies is just over the top too much. They don't do enough. It's just people, real people trying to do well, and so they try and they go. It's like what was the movie Bruce Willis did with the asteroid? It's got to be over the top, suspense and stuff like that. I think that's a little, which my books aren't. They're much more. They're exciting, I think, but they don't go into the extreme of everything's everybody's going to die the next minute, which as an engineer,
so the TV
TV
show still needs to happen then. Also, I noticed you're in another series with a co-author. How's that one doing?
Oh, it just started. She's actually a pretty successful writer in Germany.
Okay.
And I was born in Germany. We were both, I was born in Augsburg, Germany, and she grew up in Augsburg. And so I don't know how she found me, but she found me, and she's already written these books. I'm helping her make fit within the US market. So they do the translations. I go through and I edit and I change things around to make it sound more like what we would expect to hear, because
Yeah. Uh-huh.
there's two things. One, German culture is very different.
Yeah.
Her English is based on whatever you people speak in the UK. It's really not English.
Okay, so it's English, not American English.
Yeah, well, and jokes or comments are exclamation. They're different between the US and the UK, and so since you wanted to base on the people being from the US, you can't have them doing funny things that only a British person would say.
Yeah, of course.
And they don't, and they learn, usually it's the UK English they learn in Europe, and so they think they don't catch it. And I'm reading along going like, nobody would say that. So, but yeah, she just did the second one release. I haven't seen the third one yet. She's in the middle of getting it translated.
Mm-hmm.
They're very much in the theory of romance science fiction, I think.
Okay.
She doesn't think she's, the science there is just there. It's just the future. It's not, she's not trying to tell you how things happen, but it's setting in a pretty thing. And she's very imaginative. I'm amazed at some of the crazy stuff she's come up with to make that series work. So I'm waiting for the next one, because it's, the first two, it's almost like a 2-book series. It kind of everything ends and it's all great, and then all of a sudden it hits fan again. But I don't know what's going to happen with it. So I'm as excited about reading the next one as she is about getting it out. But it's a good series. It's a very feminine point of view book, I think.
Okay.
The lead character is a woman, and she does a great job. And so it's a fun series. It's just, it's very different than what I would write, but that's good.
Yeah, well, it's something different. So you've got the Delphi series, which is still running. You got anything else planned?
I mean, in the first series, the Stone series, I wrote book 4 a year ago, something. Which was amazingly hard. I got in and I wrote I switched over, and it took me a while to get going. Then I wrote the book, and it was great. I had a good time. But to get back into the Delphi series, get my brain to switch back to the other set of characters was really, really, it took a long time. It really cost me probably extra just writing, because you get in that flow, you can almost live the series. And I think that's how I write. I kind of live it in my head. And so if you get out of it, all of a sudden you're trying to get back in, and it was very, so I don't know how. I'd like to kind of finish that one up. I have fans of that series that would like me to write another one, but I have to find a window of time when I can actually know that I can block it out. Right now, since I'm behind on the Delphi series, I'm going to wait until I get
so Delphi is 15, 16 books, number 16 is coming, which is good, at 240 pages each, which I thought was very clever. And I like the speed at which the pace in the book, really, really good. The characters and everything, very interesting. And I just really do hope that it turns into a TV series, because I think, we need more, because what they've done to Star Trek, as I said, I don't like what they did to it. Now the Orville has come onto the scene. We hope that this season 4 comes. Now they're doing all the different Star Wars series, which is interesting. And there's been a few other shows where they've done season 1 and 2, and then they quit the whole thing, which I don't understand why. There was one about these people going back into prehistoric times, and they shot it in Australia, and it only did season 1, and then they stopped, and it ends with a fantastic plot twist at the end. And I thought, I'm really looking forward to season 2, and they never did season 2.
Did it happen here with the COVID situation?
No, this was before COVID.
Yeah, and sometimes they just can't get enough enthusiasm. People want different things. Who knows? Or
Well, I understand the cost of producing an episode for one of these things, if you're thinking of the CGI graphics and things like that. So I think they spend $8 to $10 million per episode of the Star Wars series. They've done the Mandalorian. It's $8 to $10 million an episode. I don't know if Star Trek they're spending the same kind of money. The Orville I know is a bit less. I think it's $4 or $5 million per episode. But if you're going to do, season 1, 10 episodes, usually it's going to cost you probably $75-80 million.
It's a lot. You got to make it back, otherwise you're not doing season 2. And and a lot of, especially TV series, used to be, I don't know if it's still true, but a lot of them don't make real money until the reruns. And so it's hard if you're not looking good, you're going to bail out quick, I guess. So I don't.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's better with the streaming series. I think they're probably more profitable earlier because they have.
Yeah, but you see what you've got going for yourself there, Bob, is you've got a lot of people that have read the books.
Yes.
And you've got a following there. I think with a bit more social media stuff, and hopefully people will listen and watch this podcast. People go and buy your book and tell people about. I mean, I'm certainly going to tell people about it because I think it's just really, really. I mean, I've been looking for a new sci-fi author for a while, and I read Brandon Sanderson, and he's pretty good. I read Asimov and a few other writers, and I love Stargate and Star Trek. They're kind of my favorite shows, and the Orville, of course. And I've been looking for a sci-fi author that I could really get in. And I bought a few books lately, and I just kind of, there's one I bought about this guy's grandfather left him a spaceship in the barn.
I think I've read the first book in that series.
Yeah, and I'm like 3/4 of the way through, but it's like that thick, and I'm like, oh, it started off really well, and then it got slow, and I'm like,
it's hard to write a book that big.
He's written about 8 series, but they're all like 450 pages, and it's like, So when I saw yours and I read the reviews, I thought, I could probably get, and I got into it, and after about 25 pages, I thought, this is good. I can read through this all the way.
And again, it's you have to choose what you're trying to write, and they, everybody, and of course you'll notice if you read why can't I get her name, Harry Potter series.
That's very good. Harry Potter. The first two
and they started out real thin, the first 2 books, and then they got thicker and thicker. But she did a good job, even in the really big book, because she's got more to say, but I'm sure the publisher's pushing her for bigger books. But she did a really good job in the bigger books of keeping them exciting all the way through. But that's hard.
Yeah.
I think it's very few times that you can get a book that thick that kind of can keep you engaged all the way through.
Yeah.
If there's some educational element to it that it works, or if it's, really mind-jarring fantasy or different, which I think Rawlings achieved with that, where it's just nobody had written anything that was that weird.
Yeah, no, she's a really good writer. I mean, fantastic writer. I mean, Brandon Sanderson was saying that, you've got to keep. He said the problem with books today is that you are competing with video games, Netflix, or people can go on now, discover a series and binge watch it through the night. While before, when I was a teenager, it was books, because on TV there was like 4 or 5 TV stations. So, and they're all on, whatever was on at 8 o'clock at night, and someone else in the family wanted to watch this channel or that channel, the ball game and whatever. So what I did is I just read. But today everyone's got these iPads and whatnot. So an author is in competition with video games and TV shows. So, and the other thing is the attention span of the new young ones that are coming up is very short. So, you give a 500-page book to a 17-year-old, they go, oh, I don't know if I don't think I can do that. But you give them a book like this, I can do that.
Yeah.
And then of course audiobooks, which is becoming a big thing now, because people like to listen instead of reading. And you can listen to 2 times the speed.
They can read now. Their eyes are bad or something like that.
Yeah. Also,
he does audiobooks because he does it while he drives. He drives vehicles for a living, or did. So he would listen to the book while he was driving.
Yeah, I mean, I listen to podcasts when I go for my run or my workout, and I put it on 2 times the speed. So a half an hour podcast, I get through it in 15 minutes. Of course, it depends on the speed of the speaker. Because some people speak so fast that if you put it on 2 times, you won't understand what they're saying. But most podcasts or even audiobooks, you can listen to it 2 times the speed. And I understand, people that drive around for, like sales reps and things like that, you can listen to audiobooks, or a housewife can listen to while she's doing the housework, or someone's in the gym doing their workout. There's so many places where you can listen to a book more than read a book. And I think that's another thing which your book is doing well as well with the audio. So what do? You found somebody to read the book for you?
I went on Audible. They have a website, and found a narrator that I liked, and then we worked together and tweaked the style a little bit. But she's a professional, and then they do it basically for people where basically you split the royalty. So she's putting an investment in by doing the time. You did the book, you create the audio, she gets half the profit for the royalties. Works out really well.
Okay, so you don't pay them up front. You just do a royalty split. Oh, that's good. That's good, because that allows a lot of people to get into this.
Yeah, you can get in. I actually pay give her a bonus over it, but you can do it straight split. They're very happy to do it. And because they're basically saying, if you're a good writer, if I like the book and I think you're a good writer and you're going to be successful, then I'm going to benefit just as much as you.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. So, how much money can you make as an indie writer then? When you're publishing what, 3 books a year?
Huh?
Are you publishing 3 or 4 books a year you're publishing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The people who are I'll tell you what I believe other people are making.
Yeah.
The people who are maintaining a #1 ranking consistently, they're probably making over $1 million a year.
And how many books are they publishing a year? How many are they doing a year? 3 or 4?
There are 2 or 3, sometimes maybe just one, but you know, they're a lot of advertising. So, you know, you got to take the advertising out.
Okay.
But if you can hold that ranking, you know, the sales, that's a lot of money.
So someone that's number 15 or 20 is probably making what, 250,000?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, which is decent.
Maybe more. I mean, that's
Maybe
still
more.
pretty far up there. If you can hold that number 15 ranking all the time,
yeah,
you're doing really well. I mean, there was windows of time that I had all my books were in the top 100, which was really good, and that was really good income. But it moves around. And again, if you don't publish, then unless you advertise, everything just keeps sagging down over time. And so it's somehow you have to get their attention. So you see people do, and I think this is a strategy. I'm not going to say I recommend it because I don't know, but I think there's people that do bursts where they spend a lot of money on advertising for a month and then they don't spend any money. So they're trying to do that.
Yeah.
Get that peak and then let it sag off and then try to get another peak and do that.
Yeah.
Because you have to get awareness and you have to drive the sales ranking up to get visibility. It's all about visibility, right? Amazon promotes your book for free also by, you know, hey, you read this person before, they send you an email. They do all kinds of things because they make money on it too. But they do all that work based on ranking of the book. So you need to push it up to get it kind of in a window where it's going to have the opportunity to take off. Because if you don't do anything, it's just going to sit there. And,
what about conventions? Have you been to any sci-fi conventions? And
I've been to a couple of writer conventions, but not a sci-fi convention, no. The one other thing I do that I would recommend is I go to a writers group. And it's not a lot of writers group they go in and they critique their own work. You know, that's what they do. In this group with the woman who runs it is a pretty amazing person. But she gives us a little assignment. Sometimes it's write this at home, which I've got to do this week before the meeting, or it's in place. And so she forces you to write in a different style, write using onomatopoeia, or she'll pick up different things she wants you to stretch on. And it's good because it stretches you. You may not use that specific technique, but it allows you to kind of leverage off of it in your writing. And then the other thing they always tell you to do if you're going to be a writer is you got to read a lot. Just read. Because you'll pick concepts up or ideas that will play into your plot or your series or your book that you wouldn't have thought of without having that exposure. And especially we're still kind of shut down a little bit socially, but it's picking back up. If you're not out there interacting a lot, reading is kind of the only way you're going to get your brain to be stimulated enough that you start thinking of, oh, I could do that, or I could my character, this character could do that, or I could bring this, you know, bad person in that does, you know, you need those. You need that feed of creativity from other people to help feed your creativity, because most of us are not Hemingway. We can't do it alone.
Very, very interesting. Bob, thank you very much for being on Quantum Action. It's been great. I'll post the link so people can go to your Amazon page and order your book or your books, because, you know, amazing series. And I really do hope that, you know, we can see this into a TV show soon, because I think a lot of people would benefit from it. Thank you very much. And thank you, those of you who are watching, listening. Remember to subscribe to Quantum Action. We're here to help you to go to infinity and beyond.